Hello, 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 everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Succesion Monday. I'm your lovely host, giving you the latest in everything media, in which we talk about our favorite books, movies, or TV shows. Of course, within this series, we're going to specifically talk about the Succession War arc within the series of Hunter x Hunter, from and by Togashi. Now, what we're going to be discussing within this episode is going to be quite interesting and maybe for some people a bit controversial. We are going to be going over Lusko Province and the Kurta Clan, and for the most part the political implications that would have somewhat of a domino effect / ripple effect into the current events. And how I'm going to explore this is like one or two ways. We're mostly going to dissect this by first understanding today what that government specifically is and how it operated, and then we're going to be discussing the more so controversial and darker elements as to what might actually be the puzzle pieces to the Kurta massacre. Yeah, it's going to be quite an interesting feat for me to accomplish, so hopefully I can get that done over time, and I hope you guys have the patience to explore such a topic. I do want you, while at the same time having an open mind, to also have those discussions down below, because I am curious to see what you guys ultimately think when it comes to this specific topic. Do you have the same questions as me? Do you have slightly different questions? I am actually pretty curious to see. But hold on to your boots, go grab yourself a snack of any kind, maybe some milk and cookies because it is the nighttime, and let's go on ahead and get started with this adventure, shall we? Before we get started on today's episode, you're going to need to know a couple of basic facts and basic information for the Lusko Province people, aka the Kurta Clan themselves. Let's get started on a couple of things. Let's start with the fact that the Kurta Clan was an endangered clan from Lusko Province. There was a total of 128 people within the population, and only about 37 members, or 29% of them, possessed the Scarlet Eyes. Please keep that in mind. Some other information that you might need to know is that the clan's people are known for their scarlet eyes. The well-known brilliance of said eyes caused them to then be in high demand as flesh collector's treasure. This happened a little bit later. I would argue probably sometime in between / sometime after. But just keep that fact in mind as well for the whole events that are about to occur. They were flesh collectors, treasure. High prize, high money, you get the gist. People not from the clan would then be frightened and violent after witnessing the change. You're going to see why that is the case in a minute, because some people leave off the reason why. Automatically people just assume it's for no reason at all, or it's specifically only for discriminatory reasons. But I would argue it's more of a 60-40, like 60% is somewhat legitimate fear, but you're not really going to know that until a little bit later. 40% of course is discriminatory, because you can't just automatically assume that might be the reaction, but you'll see what I mean as to why people are a bit volatile and hostile whenever they see the eyes. It comes from one of the facts that we'll get into later. The next thing that you do need to know is these factors led to the Kurta Clan then choosing to live in obscurity in the forests of Lusko Province. So they decided to completely isolate themselves from the rest of society due to the fact that they were quote-unquote different. I would say for their isolation, and we're going to get into that in a minute, there's a lot of holes within the logic. Things start looking a bit weird, and we're definitely going to talk more about this as we dive into the Kurta Clan Lusko Province with the perspective of it being more of a utopia. And for those of you that have studied utopias / dystopias in school, you're starting to see where I'm coming from. But we won't get into that later or get into the holes and the logic of the leaders and how it's flawed in nature. All you really need to know is that they're isolated from everybody else. They're not allowed outside at all. And if they are, there's a test, and it's probably barely outside. They probably have to be restricted back inside for some time. And we don't know what happens to people who roam outside. It's very heavily implied that they don't come back. They're not allowed to come back, which is arguably worse than the Amish, because at least with, for example, the Amish community in real life, even though they also are arguably isolated from everybody else, they still have the chance to interact with people every now and again due to one of their special events, which is the coming of age for Amish teenagers, and probably some other events as well as the Pacific sector of Amish people, which being Mennonites, in which they do get to interact with people. So yeah, I would argue that for the Kurta Clan, the rules are slightly worse, and typically with that kind of high control environment, as we discussed sometime before with other podcast episodes, it is a recipe for disaster. Good things do not occur with such stringent rules. It just, sorry to, burst somebody's bubble, I don't know. It's just not something that I sense good things happening. I'm sorry, I just can't turn a blind eye to the heavy amount of isolation. It's like, already red flags. Like, what are we really hiding? But again, that's going to be highlighted a bit more later. And some other things that we're going to talk about or ask, since we're alluding to these questions anyways. These are the following questions that I need you guys to keep in mind, including the one that I recently asked right now. Number one is, what information is the elder hiding? So kind of going back to what I said, you really have to question what specifically the government of Lusko Province is doing. Because when I tell you that looking back and reading this as an adult, especially throughout this pre-canon, something just didn't feel right to me, I know it's crazy to say, but thinking about it now, the elements, they are not aligning in a way that screams, I don't trust any government, but I especially don't trust Lusko Province's government. It definitely feels like one of those governments that doesn't mind selling their people out, and doesn't mind, and we're going to see this as we analyze the pre-canon a bit more, but it's like, to giving propaganda, it's giving you're not telling the full truth, like, it's off. But moving on to the second question, why did the Phantom Troop / Meteor City leave the message that they did? Because they left a message after the tragic events of the massacre, because it is tragic. We're not saying here, with all the questions that we're asking, we're not justifying what essentially happened with the massacre. I feel like everybody can agree that what happened was pretty messed up. War is not something that I would agree upon. I think the majority of people who are sane are pretty much anti-war, I would argue. But yeah, all the events happening, you do have to essentially ask why. You do also have to ask what was the reason they left that note. What did they mean by it's like essentially don't take what's ours, or pretty much like don't mess with us. It's like, again, it really makes you think and question what the government of Lusko Province was doing, because what do you mean you were poking the bear at one of the more so impoverished nations? What were you doing, or who were you connected to then aggravate Meteor City, or what strings are being pulled behind the scenes? And again, this is where I think Kafka Empire definitely had a role into this as well. I definitely think they pulled a few strings for these two smaller nations that have conflict with one another. But again, one of my theories that I'll dive into a bit later for you guys, you just need to wonder in your head, now why did the Phantom troops at Meteor City leave that message? Some people, some would agree, they said it had connections to maybe Sheila too. Within the pre-canon for Kafka, we're introduced to this character Sheila that basically gives him a little taste of the outside world by giving him this book, which he then gives to the leader. And we're going to talk about that a bit later, but is it because of Sheila? Is it because of what happened essentially to, I'm not going to say any names specifically if you're not that far ahead for the Succession War arc, but for Crow's friend that unfortunately ended up getting executed. That's probably the best way that I can say. Life ended, passed away in a very tragic manner. It just, arguably one of the worst ways. I'm not sure if I'm supposed to say the word specifically. This is going to be on Patreon anyway, so in case it does get removed from streaming platforms, I guess we can say lynched in a way. That probably would be the more so lawful term to use. Yeah, just tragic things that happened within Crow's youth, but I know that's probably not the case. Considering that Crowlo probably would have been a bit older, like an older teenager around that time, and that happened when he was a child, and I don't think Crowlo was even born yet. So that probably is not the reason. We're gonna go with the whole Sheila thing. And I'm not sure if it was Sheila's intention or if she was wheeled in there by somebody. I don't know. When you really look into this whole entire thing, things start feeling like it's a setup. For sure, but number 2, why did they leave that message? Number 3 question is, what ultimately caused the Kurta massacre? So this is the big, major question that I want us all to eventually answer. What are the following dominoes, if you will, what really were the puzzle pieces to this huge tragedy? Because people are thinking of it in a more black and white way, and again, when it comes to warlike situations, that's not necessarily the case, And again, is it a justification? Absolutely not. But you do have to look into the multiple elements that kind of construct what's actually going on. Because it's never just one thing. And things are a lot more connected than people would give it credit for. So I really want us to keep that in mind with the next question as well, which after we find out what ultimately caused the Kurta massacre, we then have to wonder, why were people specifically within or outside, both inside and outside, it's like for within the Kurta Clan, why were people essentially fueled by fear, right? A fearful population is a controlled population. And it's like, why were they looking for control? It's again, a supposed utopia. But again, for those of you that study utopias and dystopias, it's one and the same. It's two sides of one coin. But the better question is for the people outside of the Kurta Clan, right? It's like, were they actually as scared as people say? Was there a reason that the leader himself did not give on purpose to the Kurta Clan as to why, meaning they have this negative perception, and the other side has negative/neutral perceptions, and this is based off of what probably happened to them. We gotta get all perspectives in mind. So you really have to ask and wonder, what is being left out? Like, is the full truth being told? I would argue no. But you really have to ask the number 2 question when it comes to that. It's like, why is the full truth not being told? What is the ultimate ulterior motive? And that really is the questions that you have to ask. And yeah, that is the overview/questions to ask for this future series that we're going to be diving into. The next thing that we're going to be talking about within this episode, though, is the type of government. And we're going to be talking about the type of government, we're going to be talking about the different implications for said government, and afterwards we're going to get into manga evidence, and then we'll close out. But right now, we first have to get into something that is sweet, unlike today's conversation. Now you're probably thinking, what's something that's sweet? Well, I'm going to give you a taste of what is sweet and delightful, kind of to give you a little bit of a break before we get into the next element of the episode for today. This podcast is sponsored by Molly Bees. A tasty treat is always right to eat. Molly Bees brings bold, artistic cookies to your pantry. These cookies easily melt in your mouth and have a unique flavor experience. With the finest ingredients, including natural fruits, chocolate, and spices, it makes for the perfect holiday gift. For my lovely listeners, you can get the highest exclusive discount by using my promo code ANALYSIS. And now, back to the podcast. Alright everybody, welcome back from the break. Let's get into the type of government that I think Lusko Province most likely had. Now, from what I gathered from my research and all my days of reading, I figured that the type of government that most likely Lusko Province has is a gerontocracy. And sorry for the slight French accent, I just can't help but roll those R's. You know how it is. A gerontocracy, in other words, is a type of government that mostly pertains its power to the elders. So let's break it down this way. Power concentration is with the older individuals in a gerontocracy because it's all about old age here. They hold all of the power. They hold all of the authority. The older you are, the more authority you have. And the oldest person within the land is the one with the most power. Yes. So keep that in mind. Old is best here. The older you are, the more power you have. Yeah, that's the type of government we're dealing with. One would argue that a lot of governments work that way. One would argue that maybe it's due to the somewhat false equivalency. It's more of a 50-50 rather than a false equivalency. I could see with the sentiment of, the older you are, the more wise you are, because you do garner more life experience the older that you are, but, not every old person is really that wise, and time alone does not really bring wisdom. So a lot of elements as to why somebody's wise rather than just time itself, but, people think the older you are, the wiser you are. So a whole government constructed around that idea is certainly an interesting government. I would argue that maybe not the best. Interesting, yes. The best? No. But continuing on with knowing what type of person holds the most power, decision making also goes to older people. You have an age-based hierarchy that comes with that. See, age determines one's position, as we already discussed, and influence within society. So with old adults occupying higher positions, we're going to see how a little bit later this can come into a bit of a problem. but that's really what goes down into it. The oldest, which is the wisest, quote unquote, it's the one that holds the most power. They make the rules. You just don't question it because they're old. Of course, there's probably more complications behind that, but in simple matters, that's really what it boils down to. If we're going to use the terms of fiction, and we're going to compare Lusko to probably this civilization a lot more to the civilization within Midsummer. I didn't really catch what specific name they used, but within Midsummer, we got introduced to their village as well, and I would argue that with the exception of maybe through brutal rituals, though, to be fair, we don't really know that much about Lusko either. Who knows how accurate this comparison actually is? Maybe I would be surprised. You never know when it comes to Togashi. Sometimes he'll spin the block with a darker element you did not even think of. So, I keep my eyes peeled with this man, I do. But for right now, both civilizations that we're going to compare the two, at least for now, they work with the gerontocracy, in which the oldest person there is typically the one that tends to make all the decisions and make all the rules. I'm sure they have a ritual for that too, as to why the elder ended up, being the one in charge. But, yeah, there's surely a ritual behind that. Now, we don't know how dark this ritual actually is, but I'm sure it exists. It has to exist with that kind of civilization, but again, another theory for another episode. For right now, let's get into the number 2 characteristic, right? So after you learned about the age and how things might be constructed to begin with, what are the type of issues that may exist? First, let's get into intergenerational conflict. So this is one of the problems that I've been highlighting, implying or poking the bear. Gerontocracies often lead to tensions between older and younger generations, as younger individuals may feel marginalized or excluded from decision-making processes. Because again, when you have nothing but old people pretty much telling the government and society what to do and say, it tends to leave young people behind. And we again can see this effect into real life. We can see the consequences of what happens when it's nothing but old people that don't really have the perspective of the future in mind, or newer perspectives that might actually be healthier in turn. They tend to be stuck in their ways, which we'll talk even more about in a bit, but that's just one of the issues, right? There's always a bit of a tussle, a bit of a fight between the younger people and the older people. So that's intergenerational conflict. Then adding on to, again, being stuck in your ways, conservatism in and of itself. See, gerontocracies or gerontocratic societies tend to be a bit more conservative. Yes, stuck in their ways. And resistant to change, as older individuals may be more inclined to maintain existing traditions and values with very little want and or need to really move on to probably things that fit into the current time, right? They kind of just want to be stuck. And I would argue being stuck is not necessarily healthy, right? Life is in and of itself about progress. You don't stay stuck at a certain age, you get older. Things pass away, right? Because things have expirations. Life in and of itself, it's about moving forward. Time, even though one would argue time's a concept, time doesn't stop either. The clock keeps going, the dates keep moving on. We don't move back in years, though some of us would probably wish that. We move forward, right? But with conservatism, it seems to be resisting what is essentially natural change. So with a gerontocracy, maybe it's due to the fear of things changing as time moves on, and maybe to prevent said fear, these older generations, they feel that it's safer to just be stuck. This is what they've known to be safe for so long, and mixed in with crystallized intelligence, well, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, is normally the saying, right? But sometimes it doesn't have to be broken per se. Sometimes it just has to be rusty. To go, maybe we need a new thing. But with genocratic societies, they don't like that kind of thinking. And maybe it's mostly because it scares them. It scares them to see the potential risk of what happens when you take a dive into something new, because diving into something new is pretty scary. Nobody's saying that it is not scary. I think it'd be a lie to say that diving into a new thing is terrifying, but with discoveries, we have brand new, beautiful things that come in the end of, all these discoveries. We wouldn't have half the inventions we had if people just liked the way that things are and they didn't want to innovate. Curiosity for the future brings innovation. And, with conservatism, it kind of prevents that. But that is kind of what happens within these kinds of societies, right? Because, not all, but a lot of older people, they fear change. And, let's talk about even further, the implications of a genocratic society, genocracy. See, adding on to the other issue that we've discussed when it comes to conservatism, we also have social inequality and social inequities, because with genocracies, this can contribute to essentially social inequalities and inequities, as power and resources are then concentrated among the older individuals, and the younger individuals, again, not only feel neglect, but in a lot of ways kind of are neglected. And it results in limited opportunities and resources for the younger generations to intergenerational disparities and, conflict tends to arise because of that. I think one of the prominent examples, and probably one that I did not add from manga evidence, but I'll talk about now, is essentially medical care for Pyro was never really something that we see happen, right? It's like they had to go outside of the village for that. And it was a required thing that he needed care for, right? Because he essentially needed maybe some medicine to kind of make the pain a bit easier, or make things a bit easier when it came to the fact that he was blind, right? He needed some form of maybe pain relief or just medicine of some kind. I never really got into the specifics of the medicine specifically, but all I do know is that he definitely needed something that helped him around, maybe a couple of guides and stuff. Now, not to say that the outside world is perfect, but if the outside world were to find out that, hey, this kid is blind, what normally happens when your doctor, whoever, medical person on staff finds out that somebody's blind, right? It's like, well, you have to live a different life. You probably have to read in Braille now. You probably have to get a guide dog. We don't know if he had any guide at all. It seemed like a lot of the time for the pre-canon, that Pyro's disability was kind of just pushed to the side a bit. I didn't really see people really advocating for him within the village, which makes me really question, they already have a negative view of outsiders. It makes me wonder what they deem as outsiders. Do they mean also people within their village that's different from them? I don't know. It's not really giving the greatest representation of people who really care for the disabled. I would argue that probably one of the few people that advocated for Pyro, and the more I think about it, the more sad I'm realizing how this thing is. And not only sad, but it gets into a lot of darker elements. I'm not going to proclaim this theory yet, because it's probably one of the darkest ones, but let's just say that that village is not a huge fan of disabled folk. Just gonna toss in a little bone. The whole Sydney Sweeney controversy. Yep. Some of you already know where I'm going with this, so I don't know. It's not giving great rep, okay? I don't know how else to say it without the pitchforks coming, but it's like, come on. Why is it only essentially one person that's advocating for this blind kid to get kind of the help that they need? To the point where the rules of being like, oh, you can't go outside no matter what. Not even for medical care? Like at all? What's going on here? It's, again, another hole. Something's off. I'm sorry. I can't hide it. I can't hide my displeasure for what I'm hearing, what I'm reading. I felt uncomfortable, which I guess was the point. Good job, Tagashi. You made me very uncomfortable. But continuing on, we also had policy priorities, right? See, within a democratic society, things with the policies, they tend to lean for the older people once again. Again, talking about what I said with not only Pyro, but a lot of the situations where it's like the adults pretty much say, because I said so. And the younger generation just has to kind of stick with it. They should not question it. They should not have any questions at all. Yeah. See, the more I talk about it, the more fucked up it actually kind of is. It's like, no questions, no nothing. It's like, you don't ask. Don't ask anything. Things are the way they are in society because the older people said that this is what it is. You know? We prioritize these policies because they've been working great for us. Why would we change it? Or why would we question it? It worked great before, you know? Plenty of rules, I would argue, within the current day, depending on what country you're in. You're thinking of, yeah, it worked great before if you turn off the majority of your empathy. But the more you sit and think about it, the more you realize, I don't think this should be working. It worked in the past. Probably because people just didn't care back then. But, you know, policy priorities. We'll get more into a little bit of that with the manga evidence, but just keep that in mind. The rules must be the rules no matter what. Nothing can change it, even if it might benefit the people more if it did change, or if we had more flexibility around it. No, it must be the same. Which goes back into that conservatism once again. Then we have the last thing, which is representation and voice, or I would argue the lack of representation and voice, specifically within the younger generation. See, with democratic societies, this can limit the representation of younger individuals in decision-making processes. This can then lead to a lack of diverse perspectives and ideas, and potentially hindering the development of innovative solutions to societal challenges, which, again, it's kind of what I've been hinting at, especially with the way they treat specific questions or specific curiosities, as well as, again, disabled folk. It's not giving the angelic picture that some people within the fandom pretty much describe. Now again, not a justification, right? But I'm pretty much saying that with the tragedy, and I feel like this happens a lot of the times with tragedies, we saw this in recent cases, there's this sense of like purification, right? That all of a sudden when somebody or a multitude of people, depending, when they pass away, and again, I'm not saying this is a justification to bully the deceased, if you can do that in a way. No. I'm saying just be critical of who's essentially having this lens of purification, because, you know, just because you die or your civilization passes away, it's still a tragedy, but was everything about said civilization 100% innocent? Or you do have to realize that, people are people, and maybe there was some dark shit going on that you do have to question, even if that civilization is no longer there. Because people do, in fact, be on their fuckery. And you just gotta keep your eyes peeled when it comes to that. I don't ever want this to be a one-sided thing. I'm trying to bring nuance to the dinner table. And hopefully we can all eat. Something is off about this civilization. Yeah, but now we're gonna get more so into the manga evidence. So before we do that, we're gonna take a quick break. We'll be right back after the break, and when we come back, it's gonna be all about the manga evidence of what I discussed a bit earlier. Welcome everybody to essentially the last part of the episode. Oh, guys, we're finally here. Now let's get into the manga evidence before we close out for today. Now, the first thing that indicated that this was a genratocracy in the first place was when we started to open the pre-canon for Kurapika to begin with. See, when Kurapika asked about the rules, we saw some of that intergenerational conflict arising between Kurapika and the Elder. When the Elder gave essentially no rationale, you know how essentially your parents are like, because I said so to a rule that you wanted reasonably an explanation for, but because they either one, didn't have the answer, or two, they did, but they just didn't want to give it to you, right? But the answer is, they gave you the answer, the beautiful, lovely answer of, because I said so, or just do what I say, right? No questions asked. That is the sentiment that we got from the very start when you open this pre-canon specifically for Kurapika. So it's like we're already off to a great start, right? And we saw some of that conflict again between Kurapika and the Elder when the Elder again gave the cold shoulder for the law existing, and the law most likely was about, hey, why can't we ever enter the outside world? Because it is a little weird, right? Even the Amish go outside from time to time. I'm saying that, not specifically Kurapika, but he might as well have said that. I mean, even the Amish go outside from time to time. Why don't we? And what would argue it's because, oh no, it's because they were being persecuted, and that's why they don't ever interact with outsiders ever. Ask any minority, that's been persecuted, including my own race. If we're gonna put race on the table, I guess. Not really, but if we're gonna play that card, then it's like there are plenty of other groups of people that have also been persecuted, and yet, guess what? They still talk to people. It did not equal total isolation, and arguably what could be considered nearly, again, not gonna hark on this yet, what is nearly this is gonna ruffle some feathers, nearly an ethno-state. Nearly. It's like, that's the reaction we got? It's a weird reaction. I'm cooking with that, but we won't touch upon that until a bit later. Just keep your mind open. Keep your mind open. It's like, extreme isolation, it definitely depends on the society. There are plenty of, for example, human tribes that had no interaction with the outside world, and they haven't advanced with pretty much everybody else, and there's no reason to, because it's remote. But as far as I'm aware, at least again with the leaders and more so the elites of Lusko Province, they have resources for the outside world. So it's like, I don't think that's the case, right? It's not like they're behind, per se, everybody else, with the exception of a few things, but I think that's more so manufactured than anything else. Again, we'll touch upon that element specifically a bit later. What you do need to know is that it's not like they're left behind entirely. So that is a good question to ask. Why are we, in fact, extremely isolated? I'm not going to say that, what they went through was not that special, because that sounds insensitive. But when you really sit and think about it, it's kind of true. I don't know how to say this without, people getting offended, if you will. It's like, I'm also one of those people that will ask questions, as I am right now, and the first reaction is probably the guttural ick, But these are important questions to ask, and an isolated society typically is not a good one, right? Because that goes for high control. You can pretty much, again, tell people whatever narrative that you want because they don't have anything that opposes their worldview. We see how echo chambers work, for example, where if you're in an echo chamber and this is the only opinion that you hear, you're not really getting a lot of outside perspective or getting to see the different side of things. You typically think that your side is right and there's nothing else after that. It's not healthy. And I would be on, little Karaka's side. Baby Karaka's onto something. I'm asking those same questions. What's going on, old man? What are you hiding? Because you got all the answers. Yeah, you got the answers, Sway, actually. But everybody else does not. And it just seems like this blissful ignorance. That's weird. I know, either. But, yeah, just some of that conflict. Again, younger generation perspective, older generation perspective. You see how already I'm on the younger generation train, personally. I'm on your side, Karaka, okay? It's like, I'm asking questions, too. I don't think it's wrong to ask. I don't think it's ridiculous to ask at all. I still don't think it's ridiculous to ask. I don't know if, him being older, if he regretted asking those questions, but it's like, I don't think you should. And hopefully we'll get more answers throughout the current Succesion War arc, but something's telling me that you were kind of putting your hand, to this elder leaders to the fire. You were cooking. You were onto something, and little you didn't even know it. You know how essentially, I'm going on a bit of a tangent, but I'm gonna get to the point. You know how essentially, you as a younger person, you essentially recognized the problem, but you didn't really know what to call it back then. You didn't have a name for said problem. You just knew that something was off, and then maybe a therapist or whoever, when you're older, has essentially told you the name for the issue that you spotted a while back, and you thought for the longest time, wow, I thought it was crazy. I thought it was insane for pointing out that this was in fact a problem. Something tells me if my hand is going to be on the table, if I'm going to put the money on the table right now, that sometime in the future, and we're going to get way deep into this a bit later, but something tells me that young Karaka was onto something. That something was in fact a bit off. Now, unfortunately, whatever happened politically also ended up resulting in the massacre, right? So, there was some regret there, but I don't want to say that regret can't exist within this character, because it totally can. Grief does weird things to people, and I would know. I've been a griever for some time in my life personally too, right? But once you get that sense of clarity, the grieving never 100% stops, but you do get a sense of clarity about things, and you do put things into more of a realistic perspective. And we're seeing that a bit with his character. I'm hopefully hoping to see that we see it with his character a bit more, because something tells me we're gonna discover a lot of things that for some people, be prepared for your perspective to be changed. And I think also given Meteor City's background, and not only that, but like the Phantom Troop's background, it's like I think there's a good reason why we had that flashback too. I think both of these are going to be connected together. You know, it's gonna put you in a perspective, you know, that goes, wow. Some people are going to say, I did not see that coming. But for people like me, where a similar thing happened, and I think, though I wish they executed this better, they did a similar narrative to like Star vs. the Forces of Evil. For those of you that watched that show, you're probably knowing which narrative I'm talking about. I'm not going to go too far ahead into that narrative, but, you know, if you know, you know. It changed my mind. I was like, wow. You know, history really is in the eye of the beholder. You really gotta watch carefully who is telling this story, because it may not in fact be what it seems. But continuing onward, after you have like Kurta asking those questions, you also have, in addition to him asking questions, you have other clan members never asking questions, because again, the older you are, the better you are, so they just assume that the clan leader's right. They pretty much have the perspective, and again, this goes into more of that echo chamber kind of thinking, if you will. They had the belief for the longest time, and probably some propaganda behind those beliefs, of saying the outside world is dangerous, like completely dangerous, right? Like all outside people are bad. And I had a bit of this conversation when we got into like how the Zoldycks tend to control their children, right? Some similarities with high control governments with that of like a high control family, right? One would argue that the perspective of the outside world is bad. Everybody's not to be trusted, right? Trust is for the weak. You know, that kind of perspective. Essentially, these members within this village had the same or similar sentiments of essentially the outside world is bad. It's not to be trusted. Everybody there is bad. And in a way, even if it's accidental, I'm not sure if this is 100% intentional, you then create some sense of superiority within your group. So if everybody else is bad, the other alternative perspective, and that's the beauty, or should I say curse, of echo chambers, is you then create this vacuum of everybody else is bad, that must mean we're superior compared to everyone on the outside. It's like we are the better group. There could be nothing better than us, right? It's like everything's got to stay within here because we're the superior ones. Even if that's not what was intentional, that's what you end up getting within these very isolated groups. Yeah? You do end up with like senses of superiority. We see this all the time with cults. And even though I'm not saying that, you know, this specific group is a cult, that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is the sentiments come off pretty similar, right? And again, if we're going to compare this to, for example, the Zoldycks and stuff, and connecting it with that, it's about the mentality of what these isolated groups create. If you create the other, right? It's the whole us versus them. They're the bad guy, we're the good guy. That kind of dichotomy going on, right? You have the them, you have the other, you have the enemy. And then you have you. If they're the enemy, then we're not the enemy. They're always in the wrong, we're always in the right. And again, for some people who might look at this a bit more surface level, you might tend to agree, especially after the tragic event that occurred. But that's where I want you to stop and think, is it that being the truth? You know, it's the whole us versus them thing, is that particularly true? Or again, is there more to the story that we might be missing. And it's not a justification of either side, but it does make you question what actually happened, right? Because the saying always is that there's your truth, their truth, and then there's the truth. So keep that in mind as well when we dive into this topic for analyzing the Kurta Clan and Lusko Province, political issues they had. Later, what ended up being a complete tragedy, which is again the massacre. Ask yourself, we have their truth in a way for the Kurta Clan, right, and all this perspective, and now all of it ultimately goes down to corruption. So we have that perspective in mind. We, in a way, though hopefully we'll dive into this a bit more, have the perspective of Meteor City / the Phantom Truth. We have our truth, we have their truth, right? And then we have the truth. And ultimately what we're trying to figure out throughout this series is the truth. What happened exactly. Nobody's bias in the way. Nobody's perspective in the way. It's just the cold, hard truth. What the fuck actually happened here? What went wrong? And I would argue that what started to go wrong is the us versus them mentality. So with the clan members essentially saying, oh, you know, the outside world is bad. Everybody's bad in the outside. They're all evil. The opposite end of that thought process, or the alternative side of the coin, is then, well, if they're all evil, then that must mean we're all good. That whatever happens, or whatever our government leaders decide, it must be for the best. There's nothing that they could have done that is completely wrong. We are the good guys. They are the bad guys. There is no in between. That's a dangerous thought process. It is. And again, I'm not saying one side is necessarily 100% evil. I'm just saying, let's think about this, you know? Adding on to the evidence, we also have signs of policy priority and a lack of rep, specifically for the younger individuals. This was shown within the manga. There's a rule that leaving the forest is the gravest infraction, or in other words, their version of a felony. And that could be committed amongst its civilians, but again, here's that vagueness, here's that mystery, that when you argue with the normal civilization, it's like, yeah, no, why is that so vague? There's not supposed to be vagueness with laws. Typically with laws, except if the law is like laissez-faire, or if it's an old law that just didn't change yet, most of your laws, right, they have pretty strict standards and rules. You kind of know what the punishment is. If you, for example, commit a first degree murder, if you will. If you commit first degree, what typically happens is a laundry list of things, but you would either get a life sentence or you would get the death penalty depending on what state you're in, right? That's pretty strict. That's a felony. You know what you're getting with that. You know what you're getting with grand larceny. You know what you're getting with all these different crimes, right? But for specifically in the Kurta Clan, first of all, having a law essentially around, oh, you can't leave, like ever, which we're going to again dive deeper into that when we discuss more so of the utopian comparisons / dystopian comparisons. Yeah, you're going to see how that rule starts to look a bit darker with its intention, because it's like, what do you mean never leave? What is this, the Truman Show? What happens when you leave? And the Truman Show comparison also makes the most sense, right? Because with the Truman Show, what happened, right? There was this little fantasy world that was built for this man, and everything within said fantasy for this specific person was built, but the whole thing is, like, he entered outside, and something bad would happen to them. Really paraphrasing here for the Truman Show. We'll talk more about it in a bit as well, but Truman Show, or whatever other society that you could think of, right? Truman Show, when it comes into the conversation of utopias and dystopias, also make perfect sense. But it's the whole illusion of a perfect world, right? What essentially the higher-ups, the elites of the matter want you to believe the world to be versus the actual reality of what's going on. It's like the wool is over your eyes, so it really makes you wonder with this whole rule, not only not leaving, but also having, this saying and blanket statements about a specific population outside of yours, and this weird, somewhat sense of superiority. It's like, the more that you think about it, the more it's like, yeah, something's not right here. Because, again, if you're going to argue, oh, but they're being persecuted, that's why they do this. Again, ask probably one of your friends who happens to be a minority what their people have done despite years of persecution. If you want to even, comment down below with me, because I'm within a whole lot of minority groups, but obviously the first one mostly pertains to my skin and pertains to my people in general, right? It's despite all the things that happened, we didn't create what is essentially this weird ethno-state that isolated from everybody else. No, we, as a result of what happened to us, right? It's like, what happened with us? Well, it's like, we kind of did some innovations, right? Maybe some people still have those very negative beliefs and justify themselves, especially if they live through the trauma, but ultimately, we try not to recreate what essentially our enemies have done, or what our enemies probably would have wanted to have occurred. And when you really sit and think about it, you often have to wonder this underbelly of hatred, because that's really what it is, an underbelly of hatred underneath the so-called sunshine. It doesn't feel as right? And it goes into this one dystopian story, utopian dystopian story that I will talk about, and specifically I'll go into the details of it later, but to put into some summary, with one of these stories, some of you already know it, in which there was essentially a child who was underneath a so-called perfect society, and the job of these civilians for this said hungry child is to pretty much feed the child within the hole, but also at the same time kind of forget said kid exists. And that's kind of how I feel a lot of the times when reading about Lusko Province and the Kurta Clan. It feels like on the surface, yeah, everything's great, everything's dandy, but you look below it enough, and again, definitely not a justification. One would argue similar to a lot of other civilizations or groups of people in which there were dark things hidden underneath. That does not mean the civilians deserve anything of what they got. If we were to go into the whole cult theme, right? Even though we're not saying that this group in particular is a cult, if we were going to make that comparison, which adds on to the utopian dystopian conversation, let's take it a bit further with maybe Jonestown, right? It's like what the end result of Jonestown was. It's like those people did not deserve that. But we saw what started was mass manipulation in kind of slower ways, right? And isolation in slower ways. Until eventually they had a perspective that was so different from everybody else, and that end resulted in their tragedy. Now with this, it's nowhere near the same, but you could see how the mindset, and that's what really matters, that's what I'm trying to get at, the mindset is similar. So with this law of essentially, oh, it's a felony to leave, that doesn't feel as bright and as dandy to me. It's not really giving, oh, a happy, jolly society where nothing is wrong. Because again, a utopia is just a dystopia with a bright face. That's really all that it is. And if we're going to go with that, and we're going to ultimately say that, for Lusko Province, it was a project of a utopia that went wrong, which the more that I think about it, the more sense that theory ultimately makes. Then it's just like, man, there was a lot of dark stuff hidden underneath. This is a bit fucked up. And again, at the end of the day, with Kurta, it's like, this is a tragedy all the way around, because at the end of the day, Kurta did lose his family because of this. It's like, my God, this is a tragedy all around. If anything, that just brings upon more sadness if I turn out to be correct with the multitude of theories that I have. Though I turn out to be correct about this, it's like, this is just sadness all the way around. It's a different kind of grief, new kind of grief. He ends up discovering what might be the facts of the matter, or additional facts of the matter, because, man, this is kind of crazy. This is kind of crazy. And in addition to essentially the policies and the rules, you also have the restriction of language, because it gets crazier. Other languages are not taught to the younger generations, and they are looked down upon, just in general. The younger generations are looked down upon, and they're not taught other languages. So you just cannot know about the outside world at all, right? If you even attempt to question it, it's like, you will be seen as one, crazy, and two, there will be like heavy punishment. With the Kurta Clan leader, he kept emphasizing heavily, it's like, oh, you're gonna be heavily punished. You keep asking about the outside world. And I don't know about you, but the vibes I got from that, if we're gonna go back to other forms of media, it's like, with like Mother Gothel, like Rapunzel, she kept asking about the outside world, and like Mother Gothel had that huge rage moment. That's the same vibe that I got, where it's like, oh, you're hiding something. It's not looking right at all. It's not looking right. It's not looking bright. But yeah, the younger generations are also looked down upon. In which, with Kurta, he pretty much says, with this one sentiment and one statement, he won't teach me any of the outside language, and he's just looking down on kids. If you aren't adult, then you can't even take the test to go outside. So, it's like, take the test to go outside. It kind of contradicts in a way. It's like, I'm gonna take the test to go outside, but also, do they not come back? Because you said, like, once they go outside, there's punishment for it, but if they pass the test, what happens after they pass? That's probably something that I don't think anybody has asked, but I'll ask you right now, what happens after the adult passes? Do you allow them to come back, or do they just never come back again? You consider them corrupted by the outside world, if you will. Hey, these are the questions. These are the questions. But yeah, just a distrust and conflict within the younger generation, and I'm with the youngins with this one. It's like, there's too much to question for things to make sense. I can't live in blissful ignorance. It's just something's wrong here. I gotta point it out. I'm on the same boat. I can't lie to you. I don't think it's crazy to ask that. I still don't think it's crazy. The last thing is, after discovering that book, which I talked about a little bit earlier in this episode, that book that Sheila got about the outside world, Kurta then wanted to share it with the leader for whatever reason, And with the leader, again, his behavior the whole time was just so dicey. It's like, I know what you're hiding. Like, pull Dexter me right now. Like, I know what you're hiding. Like, not right. But, he then, after a lot of pestering, he then pretty much have like Kurapika take this test. I don't think it was for the best of intentions. And the last media element that I'll add, of course, is like, with Wicked, where at first it seemed like the teacher was helping Elphaba, but come to find out it was actually for ulterior motives and like for a completely like a dark political reason as to why she wanted to help Elphaba. I felt that similar vibe with like the Kurta Clan leader wanting Kurapika to take the test, because it's like, now you want me to take the test? Hunger Games style? What's going on? What point are you trying to prove? Because I'm on to you, old man. You're dead now, unfortunately. But I'm on to you. I'm on to your old ass, okay? Just know, I'm putting my money on the table. And I'm on to this old man. But, yeah, that is pretty much everything so far that we have to talk about for the type of government, which is, again, a gerontocracy for the Kurta Clan, and a little bit of how that applies to not only Kurapika's character, but Succession as a whole, as well as just getting some laid out foundation and facts on the table. Be some potential questions that hopefully we'll answer with this analyzation in the future. Alright guys, well, I'm going to see you next time, because the next time that we come back, we're going to take a little break from the Lusko Province questions, and we're going to go straight into Meteor City politics. So we might see that connection between these two nations with Lusko Province and Meteor City, because the next political discussion is going to be about Meteor City. So hold on to your boots and hold on to your snacks, because that's going to be interesting as well. Alright guys, well, I'll see you next time. Thank you so much for listening to today's podcast. Please remember to like, subscribe, wherever you are listening to this, right? It's like if you're on YouTube, be sure to like and subscribe. If you're on Spotify or any other streaming platform, like and follow and share this with somebody who you might also know that loves a good ramble about anime and manga theories. Alright guys, I love y'all so much, and I